posted a thing on a bulletin board in a supermarket. Anybody who can help me move a grand piano from the third floor of my apartment building, please come to my, gives the address. So shortly there's a knock on the door, and there's this really scrawny little 70-year-old person. And he says, you advertise you want help to move a piano? So he looked at him and he said, yes. He said, well, I just wanted to tell you, don't count on me. Good morning, Reb Shmuel.
I love the show. He was a comedian.
You what?
He was a comedian in South Africa. That was his profession. And he was known as the Jewish comedian. The Jewish comedian. And in his day, all they did was
Joe, would you like
stories.
a mic?
They would stand up and
like the other mic?
no. They were just storytellers. The old story, like Yiddish and that was his.
On the floor.
Morning to Moshe.
That's what he grew up on.
I don't want it to go
Yiddish and Mesiras.
Yeah.
How do we pay for our dues and different
As much money as you have.
to who?
Not really, but I can pass it on if you have
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Take your usual
Otherwise,
commission.
There's
That's
no
right.
place here in the Shiur. We used to have a
Not yet.
box and then the Shiur.
Not yet. In fact, I nominate a Matzia. He's very, very honest. That's a shaliach.
Okay.
To him, to him?
Looks like Yitzchak is not going to be on today.
Yeah.
So anybody have anything we want to talk about?
I could ask a brief question. Something we say every day in davening. The motion of Har Tzion Mishpotet Har Esav. Why Mishpotet Har Esav? Why not Mishpotet Esav? What's pshat of Har Esav? How many thousands of times you say the pasuk and never?
It's true of most of the davening.
It's good sometimes. At least we think once in a while.
What was the question again? I didn't.
The question was, we say at the end of Oz Yosher, Volum Yishim B'Har Tzion, that salvation will go up to Har Tzion, the mountain of Tzion, Lishpot as Har Esav, to judge the mountain of Esav. And what's your name?
Yitzchak.
Yitzchak what?
Yitzchak Hutner.
Hudner? Related to
Yes.
How?
Yeah, it's his second cousin once removed. It's a papa, huh?
A very colorful man.
Yes, so I hear.
So Rabbi Yitzchak here is asking, it should say, Lishpot es Esav, to judge Esav. What does it mean to judge the mountain of Esav?
Can I suggest on a simplistic level, maybe we simply mean like Esav is located on Har Esav, so we're not talking about one version, we're talking about the kingdoms, like if you're talking about Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, so we're talking about Har Esav encompasses Esav's domain. It's not just Esav, but the entirety of the nation of Esav.
That's probably the straightforward shot.
Ask another question? Are we still in the middle of this one?
What?
I just wanted to, I'm asking a question even though I'm not a mumche in the Spiros, so maybe the question is misplaced, but Yosef Tzadik is Yosef Yisod. Why do we go chronologically out of order? You have Yisod and then a few generations later you have Nesach and Hod.
Straightforward.
Do you remember what that Gemara is with Reb Shimon Bar Yochai? And,
What does the Gemara say?
the Gemara was Reb Shimon and he has to run away. He runs away from the Romans. There's Rabbi Yehuda. Morning. Rabbi Yehuda is.
Somebody who thinks it might be a Avodah Zarah, is that possible?
It's possible. I just don't remember
Or
it.
would there be Shobai Chai running away from the Romans?
And he was in the cave.
So famous that nobody knows what it is.
It is. It's very famous.
Gemara would have Shobai Chai running away from the Romans.
Do we have
Gemara Shabbos.
Yeah, good Shabbos.
Well, you remember where? I got it. I got it. Tell me.
That's it.
You have Gemara Shabbos there? Bring him, please. Shabbos not a Gemara base.
There you go.
And they say that the Yerushalmi says that an Amoritz, Amos Shabbos, an Amoritz has the fear of Shabbos. So the late Sonny Adair say that's because during the week, an Amoritz, if he has to quote a Gemara, he's able to pull it up on his iPhone, and he can still look intelligent. But on Shabbos, he doesn't have access to his iPhone. So Amoritz Amos Shabbos, though he's very afraid of Shabbos. All right, so here's the Gemara. The Gemara says, that Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon were sitting together, and Yehuda ben Gerim was sitting with them. So Yehuda exclaimed, "Kama noi masein shel umazu." How wonderful, how beautiful are the deeds of this nation, referring to the Romans. Tiknu shvokim, they made marketplaces, tiknu gishom, they made bridges, tiknu machatzoyis, they made bathhouses. Rabbi Yossi shosak, Rabbi Yossi said nothing. Nana Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai v'amar kol ma shetiknu le'tiknu ela l'tzerach atzmar. Whatever they did for their sake, meaning they did it for some very, something less than altruistic reasons. They made marketplaces so that there would be a place for the prostitutes to ply their wares. They made bathhouses so that they could pamper themselves. And they made bridges, litel mehen meches, in order that they could charge tolls. So Yehud ben Gerim, who was sitting there, went and repeated it to others, and eventually it came to the attention of the authorities, and Yehuda, who reported it, was promoted. Rabbi Yossi, who was quiet, was exiled, and Rabbi Shimon, who denigrated them, was sentenced was sentenced to death. So so then the rest of the story is that Rabbi Shimon ran away, and he eventually ended up spending all this time in the cave with Rabbi Loza, with his son, and reached these awesome madregas. Anyway, but the point over here is that that Rabbi Yehuda saw the things that the Romans had done from a very positive standpoint, and praised them. And Rabbi Shimon, identified what was behind everything. Bridges are nice, and marketplaces are nice, and bathhouses are nice, but the real reason that the Romans did these things were for something less than noble. They were to essentially to indulge the senses. So the Gemara says that Lassi Lavai, that the Rabbi Shalom is going to take the sheath off of the sun, and the righteous will be healed by it, the wicked will be judged by it. But what's going to happen is that the Yetzer Hara will be revealed, and it will be revealed to the tzaddikim as a mountain, and it will be revealed to the Rishoyim as a thread, as a thin hair. So which is it? So the Psalm talks about the fact that each challenge, each spiritual challenge, each challenge to our moral and ethical identity is something that takes a push, doesn't require a bulldozer. It requires an effort that's one very, very short push outside of our comfort zone. So a person is confronted by whatever temptation it is, or whatever choice he has to make, and it's a choice between, sometimes it's a choice between a convenience and putting oneself out a tiny little bit, or sometimes it's between pushing the delete button on our computers, and sometimes it's turning our eyes away from something. It doesn't require a massive effort. It requires the assertion of, I'm making a choice to do the Rotzein of Hashem. So each one of those choice points, each one of those crossroads is really it's not nothing, but it requires stepping over that thread. And I think that to some extent that our definition of Mesiras Nefesh is distorted or exaggerated, and we think that Mesiras Nefesh means that it requires us to literally jump into a fiery furnace, or to throw ourselves against the sword rather than submit to some ultimatum. But in reality, Mesiras Nefesh is just that tiny little thread. Mesiras Nefesh means that my nefesh literally means desire, will. Mesiras Nefesh, like a Roman says to the Hittites when he's trying to buy the kever, Mesiras Nefesh. If it's your desire to accommodate my need for the kever, use the word nefesh. So nefesh is a desire, a will. So Mesiras Nefesh, there are, of course, there is Mesiras Nefesh, which sometimes is very, very demanding and very substantive. But really, they talk about people who are Moser Nefesh, Al Kiddush Hashem, they sacrifice their lives to sanctify Hashem's name. And it's true that that's an enormous and heroic deed. but it's a deed that takes moments. When Rachel, Imenu, gave over the Simonim to Leah, at that moment she was giving away Yaakov, for all she knew, forever, her soulmate. That was a Mesiras Nefesh, which was not a Mesiras Nefesh for a moment. That was a Mesiras Nefesh where she was, in effect, prepared to live the rest of her life without Yaakov. So that the Mesiras Nefesh to live Al Kiddush Hashem is much greater than Mesiras Nefesh to die Al Kiddush Hashem. And someone who takes the position that they are going to live Al Kiddush Hashem, which means when every little thing comes along, whether it's a challenge in midos or it's a challenge in taiva, or it's a challenge in intellect, whatever the life throws up against us. So someone who makes the decision that they're going to live Al Kiddush Hashem, that's a huge Mesiras Nefesh, because it's not just a one-time thrust. It means that I'm prepared every day, maybe dozens and dozens of times every day, to put myself out a little bit, to make that little extra effort. I'm not going to lose my temper. I'm not going to give in to my indolence. I'm not going to give in to my comforts. I'm gonna do that extra little thing, that extra little push. But the truth is that those little threads, which are our Mesiras Nefesh, come in largest measure from a world which offers us the opportunities to surrender. It comes from, it's one of the reasons why on Yom Kippur we have this Shiur HaMishtaleach, we have this scapegoat, and the Kohen confesses all of the Avedas on this one Shiur that goes over to Azazel. And just as an interesting acronym, Azazel, the Mefoshim say, is an acronym for Zeh Leumas Zeh Osa Leikim. The letters of Azazel. Hashem has made it so that Kedusha and Tuma are two equal opposites. Zeh Leumas Zeh. This opposite the other, Hashem has made. Hashem has made it so that we're constantly forced to make choices which are not comfortable. Choices that are very, very challenging. So the Har Esav really represents this mountain that the righteous people. It says that the righteous people at the end of time, when they see this mountain, that they'll rejoice, and when the Rishonim see this thread, that they'll weep, because they'll recognize that how it could have been just to step over that thread. And each time was a thread, but you put together all those threads, over a lifetime, it's a mountain. And for some people, that mountain is bigger than other mountains. You know, our dispositions are very different. There are some people who are relatively kind of very intellectual and they're kind of cold-blooded. They're not really drawn into a whole lot of self-indulgence. That's the way they are. There are people there are some people who can sit and learn the whole day and sit in front of us, say in front of Beis Medrash, and they're perfectly comfortable. And there's some of us who have spilkus. One of the signs of a kosher egg is that it's round on one end and it's narrows at the other end. So there's some people who kind of their emotional or spiritual bottom is a little bit sharper than, and there's some people who can sit and learn and daven all day, and some people can't sit and learn and daven. So they struggle. They know that they're supposed to learn, they're supposed to daven, so they struggle. And the struggle is self-defining. It makes them who they are because they go out of their comfort zone. But for those people who are very, in a certain sense, tormented by they're very drawn after their appetites, the mountain is bigger because they face the
Unplug that. Here.
The batteries over there, that's why.
What's the little?
Try it out and see. Turn it off, maybe still hear now.
What's the with this? Oh, what was that?
I'm hungry.
That was your stomach? Now this is off.
Twerski, I think when we don't have other people in the room, so I think we hear you fine.
Okay, that's
there are
right.
other films going on right
Okay,
now.
so anyway, so for the people who are really very torn and tormented by their taivas, and nonetheless they manage to meet those challenges. Their mountain is a very big mountain. Because those little threads grow exponentially.
We're calling the mountain is related to the tzaddikim, and the Rishon is only a chud. Because the idea is that the tzaddikim look back and they say, wow, look what a big...
Look what I did.
Look what I accomplished.
Look what I did.
And the Rishon, they look and say, oh, I could have.
Look at it. It was just, all it was a little thread.
They felt it like a mountain, but it was really just a chud, a thread. So then how does that explain the Harisa? It sounds the opposite.
But it's interesting by that. I was just thinking.
All of the threads, the reason that you confess the Averas on this Sa'ir, Har Seir, Sa'ir. Esav was born, Esav was Ish Sa'ir. He was, those words belong to each other. They correspond to each other in more than just the fact that they have the same letters. So the Sa'ir La'zazel is a statement that Klal Yisrael, in its essence, their neshamas come from the KSY. They have an incorruptible neshama which is pure and exalted and sublime and noble, and if we if we err, then it's because, like Reb Shimon identified, it's because the Romans, the world of Esav has built around us, has surrounded us with marketplaces that are full of prostitutes and bathhouses that are that invited people to indulge themselves, but it's more than those particular examples. If you look today, I mean, I imagine there's television here and certainly there's the web in Israel, but the world's economy is driven by very salacious advertisements. You want to sell a car. When there's a woman in a bikini trying to sell you a car. If you look at the advertisements of anything, there's invariably some kind of a sexual tone. Yeah, there's something going on there, and if it's not, then they're appealing to the appetite for food, but the marketplace that Reb Shimon was talking about, where they could put zaynos, is identifying the fact that the economy of the world is driven. It's really driven by sex, and the other part of the world is all about indulging oneself. So they sell you toothpaste on the basis of how it's going to bring all kinds of attraction to you, and I mean, it's just everything is built on one of those things, and if it's not, then it's greed, it's avarice, so they have bridges. The bridges are not just bridges, it's it's the Twin Towers. It's everything. It's all about power through money.
I think when we talk about Mesiras Nefesh, I think of previous generations, Jews that lived here for 7, 8 generations, dealing with malaria and Arab marauders, the Holocaust. I have friends that somehow became from out of Soviet Russia. This is like real Mesiras Nefesh. Thank God our children have it easy. We have it easy these days. Kashrus, get on a plane and get kosher food. I can go to New York City and sit in front of a board business with the yarmulke and pay us, and it's easy. One say that there'd be no challenge of Yiddishkeit if there wasn't znus, that it almost was a vacuum, it had to come into the world. There was nus before in terms of houses that were reputed, but now it's everywhere.
It's everywhere, and we struggle with it constantly, and that's why we confess our averos on the Shiur, which is to say, this is Esav who's made our lives complicated. So if we fall and we stumble on the basis of.
So if it's not a pogrom, it's this.
You know what? It's interesting. I don't remember when this was. Probably about maybe 40 years ago. Rabbi Shiur, who was the head of the Agudas Yisrael in America, asked me if I would be their speaker at the annual Aguda dinner at, I don't forget which major hotel in Manhattan it was at. And they had the who's who there, Rabbi Yankiv Kamenetsky and Moshe, and they had all of the Gedalia Taylor there. I was 40 years younger, so at least 40 years younger, so I was a young whippersnapper, but I had the audacity to say the following. I said to this very auspicious gathering. I said to them, when I grew up in the 40s, and I was in Milwaukee, and I was in public school, and the only other religious young people my age there were two other. It was my twin brother and two other kids, and that was it. That was the whole thing. So I said I knew that I could not go into a store to buy candy, popcorn, potato chips, ice cream, chewing gum, those little orange candies with
Candy
the
corn.
huh?
Candy corns.
Tic Tacs.
What were they called?
Candy corn.
Candy corns. The strips with the little dots on them. What are
Button candy.
Huh?
The button candy.
What are they called?
Button candy.
Button candy. Nothing. So
Mesiras Nefesh.
I said
Yeah.
to him, I grew up knowing that to be Jewish required Mesiras Nefesh. Even though I was a little kid, but you had to. When my father-in-law, Oshom, came to Milwaukee. So I mean, this is already now we're talking about when he came to Milwaukee, and there was all kinds of stuff available. So he brought candies for my kids, so he offered the candy to my kids, and my kids said to him, I have to ask my tati or my mommy if I'm allowed to eat this, if it's kosher. And he was so thrilled. He was thrilled. But so I said to I said to him, I grew up on understanding that to be from Yid required Mesiras Nefesh. I said, our kids today walk into any store in Borough Park. They can get popcorn and potato chips and chewing gum and candies and ice cream cones and we call them paddle pops. I don't know what you call them over here, but these the ice cream bars. Anything you want. Anything you want. I said, my concern is that we have a generation that's growing up with an attitude that Yiddishkeit is convenient. It's not that dimension of a Mesiras Nefesh is gone. And we have friends. We have friends. You got 1,000 friends. You're surrounded by a supportive environment.
And with all that, it's harder for kids with us. Because
It is harder.
easy.
It's harder not for little kids, but it's harder for teenagers
Because
they're what's available to them that can corrode their minds is devastating. You can't even escape it.
and we brought on ourselves in a way. This is versus the candy and the kashers, the things that you had to deal with was not something you brought onto yourself. Don't you think that in a way we bring more into our own lives in many ways? Not
Well, you know what? Let's take a family today that doesn't have a TV, does not have, if they have the web in their house, they have internet in their house, it's filtered with the right kind of filter. But they walk out, the Frum family, 2 houses away, doesn't believe in that. So they give their kids a phone that has internet access. You're dead in the water.
So are we more challenged today or less challenged today?
In some ways, we're more challenged. I think we're more challenged. We're more challenged in a specific way, but this thing that Shmuel was talking about, the lack of Mesiras Nefesh, is a general thing. It's just all encompassing. We have an attitude that that being from is, you know, you're on cruise control. But specific, in a very specific way, our children are, in a certain sense, they're in grave danger because of these threats. And I'm not even sure what, I have nieces and nephews who grew up in Borough Park and knew nothing about TV. Now this goes back there, now they're already grown, but this goes back when they were little kids 30 years ago. They went into a neighbor's house and they came back and told their mother, we saw there was a box and it had Menschelach in it. And she figured out that they had seen TV. So she said to them that was TV. So they said, oh, hey, so what are we going to do? Now we have to get our eyes washed out with soap. Because they had heard that TV was terrible, but they didn't even know what a TV was. What do you say, Amatzia?
Isn't that what's very true? Is all these things that have come in this way. The battle today is a battle of overcoming emptiness. The connection that we have to, the kids have to forge now with their world. Very, very little. Because they have all distractions. And the battle against void, emptiness, and depression that you see is becoming so prevalent on young people. Unfortunately. It's very difficult.
So what's the antidote?
Was the Rebbe's job when these Mesiras Nefesh of not eating candy based on a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or it's because we Yidden and Yidden have to stick together? And this is how Yid behaves. Doesn't eat the candies of the guy. Was it about for a kid? I'm asking. Was it about a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Was it about this how Jew lives?
We didn't see it as a bastion against the guy. It certainly was. We saw it as this was the premium that we paid for the relationship that we had with the good. And we understood, there was a certain pride attached to it. But it was hard for kids, very hard.
Was being in survival mode as the Jewish people post-Holocaust, was that part of the psyche as well? It wasn't.
Yeah, I certainly didn't know. I didn't know. I mean, during the war, we had what they had blackouts. So there were repeatedly there was you had to shut all the lights in your house and sit in the dark.
To conserve power.
Huh?
To conserve power, is that why?
No, so that right. Because, so that
Milwaukee? Where is this?
Milwaukee, yeah.
Really?
They make beer there.
We had-
It's like number 4.
Yeah, it would have been a major target.
Milwaukee was once a very big
Demoralized.
industrial. So they produced lots of stuff that were.
Oh, they manufactured weaponry and things. They were concerned there was
Yeah,
no.
they were concerned, right? Yeah. So we had these, and there were some commodities that were in very short supply, and you could only get them if you had these special.
Rations.
Right there, yeah, well, there were rations things. So I remember, going to the grocery store with these little things with, that gave us the right to purchase stuff. So, and then they were collecting scrap to sustain the war effort. My mother, of course, she was a newcomer to America, so her English wasn't great. And she had put out scrap for them to pick up. They would come by, and for some reason they didn't come by to pick up. So she made a phone call, and we overheard her saying to them, "You didn't come to pick up the crap." So we had to teach her.
Can we create that scarcity now for our children?
What?
Is something good to do to create that scarcity, even artificially, somehow for our, meaning that's the problem. The problem is abundance. The problem is comfort. The problem is should we go and get them this next thing that they want or whatever, that they're violent, sort of redirecting it.
You try to let us know.
Yeah, I don't know what we can do. I have no idea what we could do.
I mean, there's some sectors of the society that are imposing those scarcities, be them with penalties or whatever it might be. They're trying to maintain that out, but with the same drive in mind.
You see that in Israel, though, in the Haredi world in Israel, where where there's not such abundance of salaries, there's scarcity. There's scarcity. You go to our own friends, down the street, down to Yerushalayim.
Some places, and there is destitution is pretty serious in many instances.
Is that driven by poverty or is that driven by hashkafa?
It's driven by poverty.
But they are Mesiras Nefesh. You see that family.
They live with
They invite guests, and all the kids move out. You can do that in your own home also. You can say, we're going to have guests. You're going to move to the other room because we have people coming. Because that's we do us authority.
Right.
And you want this new toy. Let's figure out which one we can give to someone else.
We recently had a guest who was by somebody else before us in Yerushalayim. She said, my kids moved out of their room to make room for her. She said, last Shabbos, there's a 42-year-old girl who's never been married. Last Shabbos, I stayed by family in Yerushalayim, and I went to go meet the kids because I wanted to see the children. And the 9-year-old boy looked at me and said, "You took my room." And he gave her the evil eye the whole Shabbos. And she was extremely uncomfortable. And I don't know, maybe that's what the Rebbe's categorized. You just can't even
That's the kind of. There is a certain part of your identity is about what you do, and what you give up, and where your point of Mesiras Nefesh is. So you can figure out how to bring more of those in a way that's positive. So then you can.
Rabbi, you said you were proud about it.
Maybe it was all the time when he grew up in Buffalo. The kids used to take his keep off his head and throw it under the car.
They're what?
They said all the time when he was growing up in Buffalo, the kids would take his, on the way back from school, the minhag makom, would take his keep off and throw it under the car. So then his part of the identity was he wears a kippah. That's what makes him him. Because that's the point of Mesiras, that he's going to go through that every day, and that he has to try to take it off of him. That's part of him.
If I can perhaps try. I mean, we all challenge with this. It seems to be the same question coming out from everybody and everyone's own constellation of whatever their family's made up of, and we're all living in the same place at the same time. But it seems to be what the Rabbi is saying, that we need to notice that the Mesiras Nefesh that we are giving up is for a purpose. If we miss that point...
Right. If we miss that point, then we're giving a negative message.
Right.
I mean, it's not good to want scarcity for the sake of scarcity. Want scarcity for the sake of Mesiras Nefesh.
Yeah, sure.
Right. You just can't have it. No, you can't have it because you have to be Mesiras Nefesh on certain things.
What do they call these people? Right? The monks that do that?
Which?
The monks. What's that religion that they deny themselves?
Catholicism.
Many religions.
Also, Trappist monastery that don't speak or anything like that.
Shiur Salosh.
Tanis Dibur.
But Rebbe, this is a different discussion, but is there a balance between, creating this scarcity for Mesiras Nefesh, but not turning parenting into a religion? Is it not healthy to make everything a religious thing with your children? Because then they can come to resent it. Or no, this is our Judaism.
It's not.
Is there a balance?
It's not the. It's not the denial. It's the way in which it's done. If somebody rejoices with with the things that they do and don't do, if it's done with the sense of privilege. You know, we don't do this. It's beneath us. You know, the things that we. No?
What to say is
If we do things in a way which imparts privilege, and this is pasnish for us. It's not. It doesn't compute with who we are and what we're all about. You know, we're royalty. We're b'nei malachim. I think that Rabbi Michel says this on the pasuk, and I think in Yitzavim, Rabbi Yelach. V'charta v'chaim. The pasuk says, "Hayidoisi v'chem hayoyim v'shmeim v'soretz ha'chaim v'amovetz nosad lefanecha bracha v'klal." I testify you today, heaven and earth, that before heaven and earth, life and death I place before you, blessing and curse. Uv'charta b'chaim, you should choose life. In order that you may live, you and your children. So he says that there are two very fundamental attitudes. There's one which is, I have to do this, or I'm not allowed to do this because otherwise I'm going to be punished. And there's another attitude which is, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to do this because that's life, that's excitement, that's adventure, that's privilege. So he says there are these two ways. You can choose to live Yiddishkeit from the standpoint of this is where life is at, or you can choose because you can't do this because it's death, it's punishment, it's dark.